Hey, welcome to the second course video for the song Gethsemane by Sleep Token from their album Even in Arcadia. I'm musically malnourished, and you're on my journey to go deep and wide in discovering new music and artists. In these videos, we do a deep dive into the lyrics and meaning behind the music. With Gethsemane, I do think that it's speaking about a personal relationship, possibly the same relationship that was talked about in Provider. Could be reminiscing on old relationships like we've seen in the previous albums. I'm curious, I would have to assume, even though in the React I kind of gave a long, well, semi-long explanation of just the place of Gethsemane, the context around Gethsemane within the Bible, I would have to, I assume, tie it here that the connection with Gethsemane may just be the place of his suffering, this place in which he finds himself alone, this place of betrayal, because he does talk about how we were this team and now we're not. And that kind of is the thing with Jesus and the disciples, most namely with Judas, that they spent 3 years together, living together, doing ministry together, traveling together, eating together, all the while. Judas was the one entrusted with the coin purse. And you can see in several places throughout the Gospels, this greed grab hold of Judas, because it actually says that he used to dip into the coin purse. So he'd be like secretly stealing from their coin purse. And then he sells Jesus out for money. And so I would assume that's probably the connection there, the place of his suffering, the place of feeling of betrayal, in which we should have been this team working together, but you're working against me. So we'll see, but let's get in, break it down line by line. All right, verse 1, or the intro, excuse me. I wanted you to know I've learned to live without it. And even though it's colder now, I no longer feel surrounded. This idea of living without it, I would assume has to do with maybe the feeling of love. I've learned to live without our closeness, our relationship. That's where I would go with that. And the fact is, like, it's colder now. Love is warmth, but I no longer feel surrounded. The idea of if the relationship isn't going well, and he does talk about that even further down, kind of her karma, which seems to point to maybe the things that she was doing, ways she was acting, could feel like this, almost like an enemy, feeling surrounded. And you never listen to me. And that's the thing I tell the others. By others, I don't know if he's talking about maybe other people he's in a relationship with, if they got to talking like, hey, how come that didn't work out? And the thing would be, well, she just never really listened to me. Or if it's maybe talking with friends, she didn't listen to me. And I wonder in that if he's also trying to point at him knowing he had some issues within it too, but it's almost a defense mechanism. Is like, yeah, she just didn't listen to me. But the reality is, in most relationships, there's another side to that coin as well. Let me know your thoughts on that one. This is interesting. You were my Harlequin bride. I was your undercover lover. When I went looking at this, my best association with Harlequin, it immediately made me think of Harley Quinn, the Batman character. Harley Quinn is basically Joker's lover. And I went looking that up, and it was the first time I made the connection that Harley Quinn and Harlequin go together. It makes perfect sense, because when you look up Harlequin, and we'll get into the meaning in a second, but this, and there's even some comparison pictures here. A Harlequin, here, let me come over to this side. This is more of what we're looking at, this kind of jester type character. But I think what he's also trying to draw a connection to is similar to Harley Quinn, because as we look here, Harley Quinn, a direct play on the word Harlequin, a theatrical archetype from the 16th century Italian commedia dell'arte. Like the traditional masked and mischievous Harlequin character who serves a master, often acting as a clown, Harley Quinn was designed as the Joker's acrobatic costume sidekick, romantic accomplice. But just that idea of this trickster type character, so to be his Harlequin bride seems to me this trickster type character, and then he was this undercover lover, which could also point back to provider in the idea of him being kind of in secret. One of the lines that we looked at was her secret insider, which I took more to mean this person that she could confide in. But I think it could have a double meaning, that there could be difficulty within the relationship if he's trying to protect some of his anonymity as an artist. And it could also tie in here as like somebody that she didn't want to claim publicly and she kept undercover. And he goes right off of that. But no, you never saw me naked. You wouldn't even touch me except if you were wasted. Obviously, you could take that at face value of this, like, obviously there's a fracture in the relationship, right? That she would only like be willing to get intimate with him if she was drunk. Not setting you up for the greatest of relationships. But the other side of it could be this, like, you never saw me emotionally. You never really tapped in, which if the face value is true, then the other is probably true, right? That you never really saw me for who I was. But you were trying your best. And he says again, and that's the thing I tell the others, I was your robot companion. You were my favorite color. This idea of being a robot companion, I don't know if he's trying to say that he was a bit emotionally distant within that, or if it was the way he felt treated was not as a person, right? That if you have a robot, it kind of obeys your commands. It's just there to serve you, and you treat it as if it doesn't really have emotions. However, I'm very kind to ChatGPT. I'm like, thank you for that. Could you please give me, just because when the robots turn on us, they'll at least know I was always kind. Maybe they'll pass over me. But being your robot companion, it could mean both. You know, he could be sharing from himself that he was a bit disconnected, robotic. And he's shared in previous songs the challenge of opening up. But it could also be that side that she treated him like that while he's saying, you were my favorite color. That could be like a term of affection type thing, but it could also just mean that he treated her as like more face value type thing and to be seen with, like arm candy type reference. I think they both have double meanings and somewhat shallow and deeper meanings in that, but let me know your thoughts. Now, this whole one we'll read together because I think it really flows well. I'm caught up on the person I tried to turn myself into for you, so who he was trying to become. Someone who didn't mind the push-pull parlor games. That's kind of like the blood sport. A parlor game is obviously kind of like a bar type game. And just recognizing we're playing this game of pushing and pulling, and there's not this like harmony and peace with us. Someone who wasn't always crying on the journey back, which sounds like, you know, maybe after seeing her, the drive back or wherever he was coming from as he was returning, that he was just like, it wasn't a good time together, or recognizing like this isn't right. Someone who didn't feel the low blows either way, like that's who he was trying to turn himself into. Somebody who wouldn't, you know, feel, who could just be numb to the low blows or try to forget. Thought I was waiting for you when all along it was you with the countdown kill switch. And it was me with the blindfold on. So he's trying to turn into somebody for her to try to not pay attention to just this ridiculous game we're playing. And all along, like, you're the one with a countdown and a kill switch, and I'm just living like with a blindfold on. So I think that's all pretty self-explanatory. And I was trying my best, and that's the thing I tell the mirror. I love this, right? Tell the others. I was trying my best. That's the thing I tell the mirror, which could be in the same sense, this like admission again that maybe he wasn't trying his best, but that's just the thing he tells himself to feel better about it. I was in love with the thought that we were in love with each other. So again, it's just this blindfold and him trying to convince himself. What might be good for your heart might not be good for my head. So she may need him and it may feel good for her heart, but it's really messing him up mentally. And what was there at the start might not be there in the end. I think is this idea of like, maybe if he can stick with it, maybe if he can become this person that he feels she needs, then these issues at the beginning, maybe they'll work themselves out and may not be there at the end. Or it could also be the idea that what they had in the beginning might last till the end. And the realization that that thing in the beginning that drew them to one another was dying as time was going on. It's important to note in these lines, and I don't know why they're still in here, this section is not in the song. I think this is somebody made a correction here because it even says in the annotation that this section is not there. And I went back and listened to the song because I was like, I don't remember that. And those parts, as far as I can tell, are not in the song. You cannot hear them, and I listened very closely. So it really just reads, do you want to hurt me? Because nobody hurts me better. Then the bridge, came in like a dream, put it down like a smoke. So treating this dream as if it's just a cigarette, something you use and then discard, flick away even. We used to be a team, and this concept will come up later too. Now we let each other go. So instead of being that team for one another, you're not there for each other, which again ties into the idea of Gethsemane, that Jesus and Judas were a team. They were meant to be a team, but not anymore. Judas betrays Jesus. Your cigarette ash still clinging to my clothes, which I think is the idea of the memory, right, of their time together. I don't want to stick around. I just want to let you know. And then he repeats it over and over. I do want to point out too, Jules, who's been around the channel for quite some time, had mentioned in one of the comments on an earlier song about the idea of smoke and remembering that sometimes like getting smoke from someone means you're kind of the brunt of their verbal assault or whatever, like you catch smoke, that it could also be speaking to that in some way within here. The idea of her cigarette ash still clinging to his clothes is almost too like he was the brunt of her smoke, if that makes sense. Okay, so that repeats for a minute, and then we get to this outro. No one's going to save me from my memories. Nothing to lose, but I would have given anything to get closer to you and all your enemies, because this is that idea of being a team, right? I've got a few of my own. So his own enemies, whether those are actual, people or just the personal things that he's fighting, and within, even in Arcadia, possibly these gods that are sharpening their blades against him, that those are the enemies. And I wanted to get closer to your enemies. I wanted us to be this team. I wanted us to be back to back. And I've got a few of my own as well. We could have fought them together. And this throne didn't come with a gun, so I've got a different energy. Excuse me. The throne could be his fame. The throne could be, I don't know exactly what he might be mentioning, because it sounds like all he's trying to say here is, I'm fighting this in a different way. So let me know your thoughts on this idea of the throne. I still see you when the lights get low. I still hear you when I'm on my own. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So in his time of thinking, in his time of quiet, he still thinks of her. The parasites in the nightmares calling my name like, please just let me go. So let go of the thought of her. This one's for you and your problems. your good day job, your bad karma. What are you afraid of? Which I would assume the connection here is obviously the idea of karma is that you'll receive what you've put out. And so the idea between good day job and bad karma, I liked the annotation because it was speaking to this idea of like maybe from the outward perspective, she seems like everything's together. But then how she actually conducts herself is negative, which would bring, you could be afraid of this bad karma that you've put out. Another thought within here with the tie into your good day job could also be a cut at somebody who's trying to make it in a music career, and it being that period of time where maybe he's somewhat reliant on a steady job from their partner while they're like trying to make something work over here. And it's like, it might happen, might not happen. And there could be that tension, right? Like, why don't you just get a good job, a good day job, like something that's consistent and stable, which there's conversation for that is for sure. But those are a few possible meanings within that section. The same trauma, show me what you're afraid of. And this could also be, what are you afraid of? And then answering the same trauma, show me what you're made of. Because you talk about your constant pain like I ain't got none. And I've learned to live beside it. And even though it's over now, I will always be reminded. So, yeah. Man, this is a really beautiful song as well, dude. The middle tracks within this album, I just thought were fantastic. And obviously it's not necessarily a middle track. We're moving toward the end, but the whole album's great. And I just loved, I don't know, it really picked up speed, and I loved this song a lot. I think it's got a really interesting sound, some cool dynamics within it. So let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments. Thanks for hanging out with me. Hope to see you in the next one, because we're eating good.